Can you sing a little a cappella first on the 251?
Well, they're both here, so...
I've got them set up so you sing in both.
I was singing them both at the same time.
I'm kind of pointing my mouth right in between them.
All right, we'll see what happens. I'm only going to monitor one, though. But can you sing, just sing for a moment so I can set up the compression?
I like your pin shot. I keep it with your letter. Done up in blueprint blue. It sure looks good on you. So when you smile for the camera, I know I love you better.
So we're getting like 3 to 4 on this.
Your name in lights above it.
Trying to get exactly the same reduction.
This is your big debut.
Pretty close.
I forgot the words a sec.
Okay. We're getting about the same gain reduction on everything. And it's probably it's probably like how his head's, sometimes they're identical, sometimes it's not, which means it's probably,
Keep it with your letter.
depending on how his head's turning.
The shadow falls. You see it all in 3D.
Definitely close enough for us to tell.
It's your favorite foreign movie.
Great.
I like your pin shot. I keep it with your letter. Done up in blueprint blue. It sure looks good on you. And when you smile for the camera, I know I love you better.
We're going to do a 1 and 2. 1 and 2. You just tell me what you prefer. Here is microphone number 1.
I've seen your picture, your name in lights above it. This is your big debut. It's like a dream come true.
That was number 1. Here's number 2.
I've seen your picture, your name in lights above it. This is your big debut. It's like a dream come true.
All right, solo number 1.
Peg, it will come back to you. Peg, it will come back to you. Then the shadow falls. You see it all in 3D. It's your favorite foreign movie.
Great, and 2 in solo.
Peg, it will come back to you. Peg, it will come back to you. Then the shadow falls. You see it all in 3D. It's your favorite foreign movie.
Opinions.
That last one's brighter and a little more chesty. The other one to me is more mid-forward and less shimmery on the top.
Jason, you got
like two. So which is which?
I think I know what it is, but
Yeah, well, not talking about what mic you think it is, but what do you prefer the sound of? Well, who voting for 1 and who's voting for 2? 1. How many 1s?
I'm the odd man out, I guess.
No, there's so 2. There's 3 of you on 2 and 4 of you on 1. So of the group, it's 3 and 3, and next to the deciding vote. Yeah, number 1's 47. But I think for me, what I've always liked about 47s, like I say, is they take EQ. So they're not quite as bright, but when you put the high end on it, they don't get shrill and rip your head off. I didn't like the low end on the 251 because it's lower than your voice, so it makes you almost sound... These are exaggerated things I'm saying, because the difference is both of those are really great sounding mics. Number 1. Neither, if we only heard one, we'd be like, that sounds great, but we're comparing like 2 really good things together and we're trying to find the differences. The difference with the 251 is like there was a little bit more lows that weren't anything to do with your vocal. The 47 adds in 200 to 300 hertz in his vocal, which sounds consistently full and makes his vocal sound better. Yeah, so you're like, oh, that's a much more pleasing sound. Where the 251 has some like maybe more 100 or 150, which we're never going to use and we're going to wipe out in a mix. So we're going to wipe it out and then we're going to be dialing in 200 to 300 back into his voice. I mean, a typical EQ you see people do is 200 to 300 hertz boost, 10 to 12K boost, and then a bunch of de-essing. That would be the standard EQ of any vocal ever recorded. I think the 47 is definitely always a better mic in that situation. And so it's interesting because the 251 and C12s, you think of like adding lows, which they are, But I feel like the 47's natural ability to give you 200 to 300 hertz kind of fullness is actually probably more useful in most situations. In this instance, with Nick's voice, the lows it was dialing in were, for want of a better word, just unusable. We don't need 100 hertz going on the boo. There was no EQ, no. All we did was add identical compression so that they had, and as you can see, they printed at exactly the same level. So there wasn't any level differences in it. I don't subscribe to the looking down or up anything. You just look directly. When I had singing lessons with Ron Anderson, and I specifically, if you've got time to take singing lessons, take singing lessons, because then you can learn how to speak to singers. That's what I did, because I was like, I want to find out all the different techniques that you do. Like simple things, like for untrained singers, they don't understand the diaphragm is where all the air comes from. So if they're doing like a note like that, you need to tighten your stomach muscles to push air through it. But so you can tell them to do that, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're a genius," you know. But those are things you learn from going to singing lessons. And Ron's whole thing was never look down, never look up, always look straight, because you're going to constrict like this, you either get like that or like this. So you should always look straight. Okay, so this is, I didn't actually know this is the Rivera one, but these are quite sweet. At the moment, we have a 57 on the front. So I'm sure you all heard this about speakers. At the very edge is the darkest, and the dust cap in the center is the brightest part of the speaker sound. So typically, I start off somewhere in the middle, which is what we got. So it's about in the middle between the center dust cap and the edge. Now, the Dave Jordan technique, which is how we got all those massive guitars and Allison chains, is to double mic open back cabs. We'll have Jason grab another 57, and what we'll do is we will mic the opposite of this. Now, the way that a speaker is laid out with the chassis on the back, there's like gaps, so you have to kind of get strategic on it, so you're not just miking a piece of metal. You have to actually mic the gap. So we're going to put one about here, which is actually around about there. So I'm going to drop this mic down so that they're opposite each other. So we're going to have one mic coming in from the cone this way, from the back, and then the front one here. And they will be exactly opposite each other, and hopefully the same distance away from the speaker. So we can just reverse the polarity of this one here. So as the speaker moves forward, this microphone's hearing it this way. When it moves back, you know, you understand the relationship, because polarity has been reversed. They will hear exactly the same way. So you'll get no phase cancellation. We'll bring that up on the console, and we'll print it to one track. We'll commit. The reason why we do this is because you get so much more low end out of the back of the speaker. In Dave's instance, he liked to use like 8-inch speakers. So those huge guitars quite often were just little cabs like this with 8-inch speakers on it. But because he's miking the back and he's reversing the polarity, he's getting more low end, he's blending the two mics together, and you get this wall of huge guitars, which you all think is like 100 Marshalls all going full at once. Well, it's not. It's like a bunch of little 8-inch speakers, and it gets you a massive guitar sound. But in this instance, it's kind of nice because I do love deluxes, and they are pretty warm, but we can just dial in a little bit of that back, and we'll see if we can, you know, create our own EQ without having to do anything on the amp. Also, we can experiment. It's nice to use the same mic front and back, so we'll start with 57 front and back. Why don't we do what we were talking about yesterday and put the 121 up against it and see if the Royer adds anything, because typically people use that to get a little bit more warmth in there. Let's see what we prefer. We might prefer the 121 up against the 57, or we might prefer the reverse 57. So it'll be good exercise. We can change the tone just by using microphones rather than reaching for anything on the console. But of course, the number one way we should be getting tone is from the guitar player themselves, actually on the amp. This has to be good. You know, I've spoken to a lot of engineers that I really respect, and most of them will never EQ on the console unless all options have been exhausted by, first of all, EQ on the amp, and secondly, by miking techniques. So this is the 57 we had before. Let's bring in the rear. So this is the rear, so it's certainly a lot more low end. But if I bring in the front, of course, we get the phase cancellation. So let's reverse the polarity here. So no rear 57. Out of phase, in phase. I do find that too much of the rear mic can make it just seem a little bit cloudy and you lose some of the immediacy. So you can fall in love with the sound when it's in solo, and you're hearing on its own. But in the mix, that's probably a little bit too much. But you can hear what it's adding, it's great. All right, let's pull in the 121 now. So that's interesting. So that's adding body, but it's also adding attack. So now we have to decide what we prefer. I mean, I kind of like that 121. So we'll do a comparison. So it's definitely body, but keeping the attack. And then let's bring in the rear 57. So here's our comparison. 57 back. 121. Obviously, there's a lot more volume being created with the 121, but I do like the body and the attack. Just tell me which one you prefer. This one? Or this? Or? First, okay. All right, so we're going with the 121. I think it's pretty clear that the rear 57 is adding a cloud, and to be honest, what's that going to do? It's going to not cut in the mix. Definitely what the 121 is, we can do it for a comparison so you can hear, but the 121 preserving the transients and the brightness as well as adding the body is only going to do us good. Where I think the other one was adding warmth, which on a certain sound might be perfect. That might be really good on an arpeggio, you know, where you've already got too much brightness and thinness and you're just trying to add the body. But yes, you're right. But here's unfortunately where the experience goes, where I know what we're trying to improve upon. I just wanted you guys to hear it for yourself, and we all came to the same conclusion.